Absence of bees, planet Earth's countdown to collapse. Imagine waking up one morning. The world feel off. Subtly, but deeply, wrong. That familiar background hum of life, nature's busy rhythm? It's just incomplete. This isn't some far-flung sci-fi story. And it's not quite our complex reality today, where some bee populations are struggling badly while others are bouncing back, and overall, global colony numbers have actually gone up in recent times. No, this is a journey into a stark what if. What if all the amazing things bees do, all of them, just stopped? What if these tiny pollinators, the ones responsible for so much of what we see around us, so much of what we eat, just weren't there anymore? We're not saying this is about to literally happen tomorrow. But by imagining a world without them, we can truly grasp how unbelievably important these little creatures are. A world counting down to a new, much tougher reality. Then, the last headline flickers across a dusty, forgotten newsfeed: final bee confirmed gone. The world doesn't end with a bang, but with a silence so loud it's deafening. We've crossed a line. For many, at first, it's just another problem somewhere else, another headline. But a crucial piece of our planet's machinery has just been lost. The countdown has officially started. The world before, the indispensable bee. Before we step into that quieted world, let's take a second to remember what we had. What these creatures, often no bigger than your thumbnail, really meant. For millions of years, bees were evolving, becoming nature's master pollinators. They even developed cool things like pollen pouches on their legs, specialized gear for carrying nature's golden dust better than anything else. This wasn't just a little side job for them, it was a cornerstone of life on Earth. Bees were like the unseen architects of our landscapes and a crucial part of how we get our food. All around the globe, they were essential for so many plants to reproduce. Think about it, roughly a third of the food we eat, those bright fruits, healthy vegetables, crunchy nuts, all of it depended, one way or another, on the tireless work of bees and other pollinators. In North America alone, something like 90 different commercial crops needed them. That's a big chunk of what people ate, maybe 15 to 30% of the average diet. They weren't just hanging out in nature, they were actively, powerfully shaping our world and keeping us going. The first real sign that something is terribly wrong isn't some dramatic explosion. It's an emptiness that creeps in, quiet and unsettling. Weeks turn into months. That first feeling of, this can't be happening, slowly turns into a terrifying certainty, especially in farming country. The fields, the ones that should be bursting with the promise of food, now look strangely empty for so many important crops. Almonds, apples, blueberries, cherries, cranberries, pumpkins, watermelons, whole industries built on these delicious foods start to fall apart. That beautiful dance of pollination, once done for free by millions of bees, now has to be done by human hands. But the sheer scale? It's overwhelming. Can you imagine trying to carefully dab pollen from one flower to the next, plant by plant, across millions of acres? Early attempts to do this on a massive scale are incredibly expensive and just don't work very well. Just in the UK, for example, someone figured out it would theoretically cost a mind-boggling £1.8 billion a year to manually do what bees used to do, and that's not even counting tools, research, or training people. There just aren't enough people to do it. Supermarket shelves, once exploding with colorful produce, start to have noticeable bald spots. First, it's the fancy fruits, then the everyday ones. Prices for foods that need bees shoot through the roof, and suddenly, millions of people can't afford them. Now, it's true that some of our main calorie sources, things like wheat, rice, and corn, are pollinated by the wind. So, these grains would still grow, which would keep widespread global starvation at bay, at least for a while. But the variety in our diet, all those vitamins and nutrients we get from colorful fruits and vegetables, that starts to disappear. The farming sector, a huge part of many economies, is hit with a crisis like never before. Farmers who used to grow vibrant orchards just watched their livelihoods dry up. One study looking at apple orchards showed that if you don't have enough bumblebees, fruit production could drop by half, and farmers' profits could plummet by over 40%. Now, imagine that happening to crop after crop, all over the world. The economic shockwaves start right there, in those silent, empty fields. The unraveling web, biodiversity in crisis. But this crisis doesn't just stop at the farm. It spills out into the wild, into forests, meadows, all the ecosystems that make up our planet. Bees weren't just helping us grow food, they were what scientists call keystone species. That means their effect on their environment was way bigger than their numbers might suggest. They were like the critical bolts holding together really complex natural structures. Once they're gone, countless types of wild plants that depended entirely on specific bee partners to pollinate them are in serious trouble. Take bee orchids, for instance. They evolved so specifically that only their particular bee buddies could help them reproduce. Without someone stepping in on an impossible scale, these plants are basically doomed, first in small areas, then everywhere. Even plants that could be pollinated by other insects often did best, and made the most seeds, thanks to bees. As these plants start to disappear, the first wave of extinctions kicks off a chain reaction. Fewer plants mean less food and different kinds of habitats. Animals that eat those specific plants start to suffer, and their numbers drop. Then, the animals that eat those animals start to run out of food too. The complex food webs, built up over thousands and thousands of years, begin to fray and fall apart. Forests get quieter, not just because the buzzing is gone, but because there are fewer birds and other creatures whose lives were all tangled up with those bee-pollinated plants. Predators that specifically ate bees, like some bee-eater birds, are hit hard and fast. The amazing variety of life, which was already under pressure in our world, starts to unravel frighteningly fast, one lost thread at a time. Ecosystems become less resilient, less able to bounce back from other problems. They become fragile, faded versions of what they once were. The human cost, societies under strain. The collapse of farming and the quiet fading of biodiversity aren't just abstract problems out in nature, they hit us humans hard, leading to immense suffering and making societies unstable. The economic value bees brought was huge. In the US alone, these tiny workers added an estimated $30 billion to crop values every single year. Globally, pollinators, with bees doing a lot of the heavy lifting, supported food production worth around $577 billion. And the honey market itself? Billions. When these economic foundations start to crack, the problems spread. The price of the food that's left, even the stuff not directly pollinated by bees, goes wild because the whole farming system is disrupted and people are panicking. Huge numbers of people lose their jobs in farming and all the industries connected to it. Areas that relied heavily on bee-pollinated crops are economically devastated. This could even lead to people having to leave their homes, searching for food and a stable life. The global food trade system, which was always a bit of a balancing act, is thrown into complete chaos. Countries that used to export food see their production nosedive, while countries that import food face shortages and crazy high prices. Food riots, something that feels like it belongs in history books, could become a terrifying reality in many places. That whole industry of commercial beekeeping, where beekeepers cleverly moved hives around to pollinate different crops as they came into season, making millions from almonds in California, blueberries in Maine to pumpkins in Pennsylvania, it's gone, a thing of the past. It's not just about money lost, it's about losing security, losing the ability to predict what's next. Governments are suddenly facing enormous challenges. How do we feed everyone? How do we keep things from falling apart? How do we manage economies when fundamental pieces have just vanished? The very fabric of society starts to tear as the basic need for food becomes a daily struggle for more and more people. The peak, a world transformed. Years go by. The initial shock of the bees' disappearance has faded, not because things are better, but because people are forced to get used to a new, much tougher way of life. This is the peak of the crisis, the new normal, in a world that's been changed forever. Those vibrant colors of all different kinds of fruits and vegetables are now just a distant memory for many. Instead, diets are monotonous, relying heavily on wind-pollinated grains and whatever else can be grown without nature's main pollinators. What used to be lush landscapes have, in many places, turned into ecological deserts, now home to a much smaller variety of plants, mostly just the ones that can pollinate themselves or rely on the wind. The silence in these areas is deep, broken only by the wind. The incredible beauty of a wildflower meadow, humming with life, is now incredibly rare, something you might only find in carefully managed, artificially kept up botanical gardens. Societies have had to change, often in painful ways. Rationing different kinds of food is normal in many parts of the world. Tensions between countries over resources, especially good farmland and water, are much higher. The global economy has shrunk and shifted dramatically, with entire industries related to diverse agriculture and their supply chains either gone or greatly reduced. Human ingenuity is always being tested, but the sheer size of what was lost when the bees vanished casts a long shadow over everything. This isn't just a food crisis anymore, it's a massive ecological, economic, and social shift that has left the planet and us in a much more fragile state. That countdown to collapse wasn't one single event, but a slow slide into this diminished world. The echo of extinction, adapting to the unthinkable. In this new world, people, being as resilient as they are, fight to adapt, to try and get back even a little of what was lost. The focus of everything changes. Scientific research, which used to be about understanding bee health, is now desperately trying to find ways to replace what they did. Tiny drones, robotic pollinators, are developed and sent out into high-value farm areas. These little engineering marvels buzz through orchards, trying to do the job of millions of bees. But they're expensive, need a ton of energy, break easily, and just don't have the subtle, evolved know-how of actual bees. They're a temporary fix, not a real solution. Genetic engineering kicks into high gear, with a desperate race to create self-pollinating versions of crops that used to need insects. There are some successes, but often the taste isn't as good, or they're not as nutritious, or they lose other good qualities. Huge ethical debates erupt about changing nature so fundamentally, but the urgent need to feed people often wins out. Diets change everywhere. We become more reliant than ever on just a few staple crops. Lab-grown foods, once just a quirky idea, become much more common as a way to get nutrients without traditional farming. New, smaller-scale farming systems pop up, maybe in enclosed buildings where pollination can be painstakingly managed by hand, or by rediscovering old types of food plants that pollinate themselves or use the wind. There are small wins, sure, proof of how clever and determined people can be. But these wins are set against a backdrop of enormous, permanent loss. The fight to adapt is a constant struggle, a race against the ongoing consequences of the bees' absence. The cost of trying to replace what nature once gave us for free is a heavy weight on every society, a constant reminder of the connections we broke. The challenge isn't just about surviving anymore, it's about finding some stability and meaning in a world that's biologically much poorer. The lingering shadow, lessons from a silent spring. Life without bees is quieter, less colorful, and much, much riskier. This new normal means we're always living with fragile ecosystems and food supplies. Many kinds of plants, and the animals that needed them, are gone for good, their unique genetic blueprints wiped from Earth's library. That amazing richness of life, which once gave us so much resilience and countless benefits we didn't even realize, is just a pale imitation of what it was. Humanity has adapted, yes, but we've paid a massive price. The amount of resources poured into trying to copy the free services of pollinators is staggering, taking money and effort away from other critical problems. Our global diet is way less diverse, which could lead to long-term health issues. The sheer beauty of a world buzzing with a full spectrum of life is something grandparents now tell stories about, a vibrant memory compared to a more drab present. Perhaps the biggest lesson from this silent spring is just how connected everything is. The disappearance of creatures that seem so small can set off a chain reaction that affects every part of our environment and our societies. It's a stark, unforgettable warning. The natural world isn't some bottomless pit of resources for us to use up. It's a complex, delicate system that our own survival depends on. The drive to protect what's left, to really understand and care for the biodiversity in our actual world, suddenly feels much more urgent when we think about the lingering shadow of such a huge loss. The world we've just walked through is a hypothetical one, a wake-up call. But the pressures on bees and other pollinators in our real world? Those are very real, right now. So, why not take a moment to learn about the pollinators in your own backyard or local area? Support groups working to protect their homes, push for farming methods that are kinder to nature, and maybe even plant some pollinator-friendly flowers. Every little thing you do, no matter how small it seems, helps build a world where that vital buzz of life keeps going strong. Conclusion. This story of a world without bees is really a cautionary tale. It highlights a simple, powerful truth: the health of our planet and our own future are completely intertwined. When we understand how much bees are worth, when we recognize the quiet, essential work they do every single day, we can choose a different path. We can choose a future where the hum of bees is a constant, vibrant reminder that we live in a thriving, interconnected world. Please join our community. It's free and your support of our channel is everything for us. Like, share and subscribe. Bees on Earth.